The Sacred Kingdom is not a great standalone movie. It has exaggerated tropes, undelivered promises, and very cringe acting at times, which can throw off an unprepared viewer. But if you consider the Overlord's plot and the context behind what's going on, this movie turns into an absolute spectacle. Hello Comrade, my name is Bachis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got a theater play to enjoy. I didn't use the word theater for nothing, as let me tell you how I interpret this movie. It was Neia recounting the great deeds of Ainz-sama to the general public at this exact moment. Obviously, we saw what actually happened in most cases. Yet, if you look at it through the prism of our second best girl sharing the tale of how the homeland was saved, a lot of cut corners and blatant storytelling flaws start to make sense. Take the very beginning with its back and forth between the past and the present. Neia Baraja is talking from her perspective, in which she didn't know about what happened with the princess and the others until she was told by Gustav, just like we are now. Similarly to that, we didn't see how Ainz-sama acquired the army for that last bit at the end. Well, it's his army already, as they serve a sadistic frog and he in turn serves the Sorcerer King, but the point is that Neia has no clue how he conquered them and doesn't really need to in order to tell an inspiring story. Also, if this is a play, we shouldn't expect complex combat, only bare minimum, which is why the stereotypical flashy flying sperms in the sky work in this case. To prove this point, we can see that all the fights that include our temporary MC were much longer, and to disprove this point, there are a bunch of decent battles, like the one at the gate where Neia wasn't present. However, all of this, you got to set your mind to a certain state to appreciate this piece of art, doesn't excuse lame and straight up detrimental parts of this movie. The setup was rather weak. Sure, we saw Yaldabaoth penetrating some defenses, then ransacking the capital, yet what happened between that and the audience with the Sorcerer King? How did they escape when the demon was right in their faces, or what happened to other cities and their civilians? I know that it doesn't take a room temperature IQ to conclude that they are fucked in the least desirable way possible, but show it to me for even a few seconds Mirror of Galadriel style, so I can develop at least some care for these new people. Then there is when did they learn about Momon?
Previously on Dragon Ball Z.
アダマンタイト級冒険者漆黒のモモン
How did this armed unit go through several borders? And what the hell did Neia say to Ainz-sama? There's a limit to how many times you could do a suspense cut to the future and then explain what happened, as it becomes annoying and frankly very confusing, because 2 seconds ago she was thinking about this undead not being a hater, and now she's being scolded for talking to the Supreme One, which makes the viewer think it's this remark that caused all the trouble. The source material has all the missing pieces naturally, with them meeting blue roses and such, but if you decide to skip certain parts in favor of the runtime, stitch them a bit more coherently. By the way, I have to compliment the length of the movie, since 2+ hours for an anime is very impressive. Also, this is the first time I see such an elaborate disclaimer before the film starts, and find it surprising that it lived up to the warning. Some scenes were absolutely metal, like Kalka being used as a blunt weapon and Custodio being covered in her remains. This kid's empty eye sockets, people starved to their skeletons, and monster designs deserve a mention too, though I think Freyran did the go say hi to Batman's parents order a bit better. There were a lot of small things I thoroughly enjoyed about this movie, like the bad guys using human kids as shields, going as far as to tie them around themselves to protect their vitals, is exactly how I imagine monsters would fight against humanity on a larger scale. It's not even that far from reality, since children traps are a thing sadly, with one of the best fictional examples I can give being Legion from Fallout, who either gave them a live grenade and sent them forward, or mined the area around to kill whoever attempts to rescue them. Speaking of explosions and creativity, using summons as a... how can I say it for guidelines? Using summons as a controlled anti-personnel combustion device delivery system is very smart, since you don't have to lose soldiers in case of a sudden rapid disassembly of said device, or if they are intercepted. Very cool fantasy concept that other authors should definitely consider. Even existing stuff got an interesting spin, like the taunt skill, Actively preventing your opponent from attacking anyone besides you while leaving their decision-making intact is way more dramatic than the usual rewiring of the victim's brain into immediately switching their attention to the tank as shown in solo leveling, for example. It works, I guess, yet it's not that exciting. What is exciting though, and does work really well, are the runes used by the Dwarven craftsmen whose workshop kindly sponsored this video and provided a nice discount for us to take advantage of. Runes are not just a fancy engraving on your equipment, they make it lighter, sharper and more durable. Not only will your life expectancy during combat go up due to increased performance, you will also get plenty of time to think about your next move, as the mere sight of such tremendously powerful items will stunlock your enemies into glazing them more than Krispy Kreme does with their donuts. And if you're not a fighter, don't worry, as this technology is being brought back courtesy of the Great Sorcerer Kingdom to be useful in many other parts of life, keeping your beverage cool, for instance. If that's something you're interested in, go to your local runesmith vendor and tell them the promo code Ainz-sama to get 20% off on your first runic purchase and to get a chance to win an exclusive Ainz-sama plush. Seriously though, the promotion of this newly acquired industry takes up about 50% of reasons for this whole charade, and it doesn't go well, neither for Ainz-sama nor for the viewer. Most of the time, the Nazaric's Department of Marketing does an outstanding job at selling fear and desperation usually, yet in this case, it's clear that they weren't involved. The Supreme One failed miserably with trying to put rune technology back on the menu, mainly because he gave away a fake runic bow. Yes, if you wondered why there was no satisfying main character moment where Neia finally used her new weapon to its full potential, it's because 1. This is not a fairy tale, and 2. This is just a normal bow. With great stats by the New World standards, but still just a bow decorated with fake, heavily worn runes. It wasn't clear in the movie, just like it wasn't for its new owner, which left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths due to it being hyped up so much. Again, if you didn't know the context, you would have been rolling your eyes by the end of the movie because they brought it up so often in a not so convincing way. Overlord Wrath's acting was painfully terrible. Actually, scratch that. It was pure concentrated cringe like a bad school play, which is why it seemed very weird for an unprepared viewer. Near the end, even the scary-eyed Legolas got fed up and told everyone to stop complimenting it. I love how this scene was done. All these paid actors were trying their best to keep the performance going, but she has thrown them off so much that the music itself changed from ominous to goofy, giving us a fat hint that it's all a big ruse. Another contributing factor to the plan failing was Miss Baraja, who got defensive about this gift and didn't let anyone pry about it, on top of assuring her comrades that they wouldn't receive anything similar. Next, we should talk about the plot and its 4 main players, starting with our beloved undead Overlord. We got the obligatory Sasuga moments, as well as some good character development. He didn't change necessarily, but we got reminded that he's still cautious about the threat of people who took control of Shaltir and dove deeper into his personality. For example, his conversation with Neia about strength was arguably the best reason to seek power out of any I've seen in other animes. If I was weak, everything would have been taken from me. At face value, this sounds very greedy and selfish. Yet, if you take his mindset into account, he's talking about protecting people he cares about and their happiness, which is more in line with what many good characters want power for. He knows it firsthand too, as he lived in a dystopian future where his mother was overworked to death and he himself lived a sad, miserable life. However, Bone Daddy is not an idealist and knows exactly what needs to be done for the greater good, in contrast to Remedius, whose shtick for justice prevents her from choosing a lesser evil, practically sentencing innocent lives in favor of her own convictions. Killing a child to save hundreds is a decision only a king can make, and I like how he's totally aware of his actions. He may have said some nasty stuff to the kid's father, yet I can't exactly say he was wrong. That's the essence of the Overlord story here. It's not about being good or bad, it's about being capable of both and deciding which route to take in any given situation. Currently, the goal is to build good relationships with the Roble Holy Kingdom in order to later take full control of their country, directly or indirectly. The orchestration of the initial attack was a pretty simple matter, since rallying demi-humans is rather trivial given their tendency to submit to an overwhelming power. Negotiating with humans, on the other hand, requires a lot more finesse, and the Nazaryk's crew did so really well. Basically, by utilizing her pride, they let Custodio talk herself into a very specific agreement. Ainz-sama takes care of the Demon Emperor while the Knights deal with his army. Not only does it prevent them from manipulating the Sorcerer King into solving their political issues, it also allows him to further indebt people of the Holy Kingdom by going above and beyond the original agreement, risking his life in the process. Additionally, and coincidentally, this plan had an even greater effect on Neia, who took all of this to heart since she got to know Ainz-sama better and started sympathizing with him. The fact that she ended up creating a religion around him is nothing surprising, as he essentially followed the steps of Jesus in coming to save everyone, dying for the cause, and coming back stronger than before, bringing this conflict to an end. Actually, I may have just described Gandalf, but that's a discussion for another time. The plan works splendidly in this regard, and part of it is due to the Supreme One learning to be a better hero. Look at how confident he is now at being the center of attention in comparison to when Momon had to be convinced to declare victory in the Riesti's capital. On the topic of personal qualities, we have Grandmaster Karen. She is a very interesting character, and I wish this movie came out sooner so I could have included her in my Overlord intelligence video. Custodio is not the sharpest tool in the box. Well, she does cut better than Stronov, and is not stupid as we saw her make good decisions in combat, yet forward thinking is definitely not her strong suit. Just like Philip, she thought she can outplay these dangerously smart individuals, and thank God Gustav was there to keep her in check. However, I don't think she deserves all the negativity, as you need some king-level composure to not spiral in her circumstances. She is bold and rash, sure, but after seeing your country destroyed, queen obliterated, and sister disappeared, one can be excused for being a little angry. I can't even blame her for being mad at Neia, as she indeed could have compromised the only chance they had at saving their country. Her suggestion of Yaldabaoth and the Sorcerer King killing each other is not that terrible either, considering the information she has. This new ruler appeared out of nowhere, conquered a bunch of places, and dragged even more into an alliance. Nobody can do that through positive means, so it's reasonable to assume that if this tyrant disappears, these countries would be freed and everything will go back to normal. Yeah, think about it for longer than 2 seconds and apply everything you just learned during your trip to Rental to make this argument fall apart. But she is a holy paladin whose home just got ravaged by a demon. No way she'd warm up to an undead that quickly, which is why she tries to use them to solve more of their problems and doesn't realize that others who are less fanatic will see Ainz-sama as a savior for it. That's practically what Aoyama was talking about with All for One. At some point, it doesn't matter who gets you out of your misery. Now that I said it, the entire Overlord story is a much better written version of My Hero Academia subplot about world domination. Anyway, she did a few things right, like giving him a plan to moisten up his bones, as a certain wolf says, but she didn't expect him to turn it around and recruit Neia. Interestingly enough, Ainz-sama accidentally did what Jirkniv intended to do with Aura and Mare. The Bloody Emperor tried to subtly entice the Elven twins to switch sides by offering various benefits to later use them against Nazarik. He failed, just like the Frown Face, who severely underestimated this charming skeleton's ability to build genuine relationships with people. She did have a eureka moment though. Putting together that these two are working together was totally unexpected, and I love how Mr. Doppelganger over here did an oh shit motion and proceeded to not make a big deal about it. If Remedius was known as someone with a triple-digit IQ, others would have paid this speculation more attention instead of the usual, there she goes again suggesting something stupid. Following that, there is Neia Baraja. We touched on her character already, so there is little left to say. She went through a slightly modified hero's journey that we see in almost every shonen and many other pieces of fiction. Ordinary life interrupted by an event, road to find a mentor, trials and tribulations, atonement for mistakes, and they lived happily ever after. Works like a clock, with Ainz-sama controlling its hands. Not intentionally for the first half, by simply exposing this girl to a new way of thinking and the true meaning of indiscriminate justice, he became her role model, resulting in her becoming a herald of the Sorcerer King. This is important because our lord was considering other people for his devious schemes, and only after Custodio annoyed the hell out of his pelvic bone, he switched his attention to the young squire, going as far as to resurrect her. Once more, his spontaneous decision proved to be the most ideal, as this is what made Neia think she was guilty of his death and set her on a path of starting a whole new religion. Lastly, we got to talk about one adorable automaton. They cut a lot from the source material, but I'll be damned, they did so well with Shizu. The speech, the mannerisms, the occasional awkwardness really sold her character, completing the introductions of all the Pleiades. I watched this movie in both sub and dub from start to finish, and you know what? I prefer the English VA for her since it's just ever so slightly more emotional, especially towards the end. She's not a lifeless robot, so it was very amusing to see her personality come out through her interactions with Neia.
Oh, what about Miss Baraja? She's a human, but it seems you got along well.
I like her lots. She's great.
This is an unprecedented relationship, mind you. Shizu is the first person from Nazarick to make a real human friend from the New World, much to Ainz-sama's excitement. There is a debate whether the murder girl is just a pet or it's a genuine friendship, but I think it's the latter, given Shizu's positive karma, which indicates a tendency to treat humans as people and not animals. I really hope to see more of her, like the reason for why she was the one to stay behind and help the knights. It was decided after the battle between the Demon Emperor and the Sorcerer King, where the maids were replaced by a doppelganger squad who borrowed their equipment and were buffed by Oriole Omega, the other member of the Pleiades responsible for teleportation gates and stuff. Remember how Ainz-sama asked to make this fight real so as not to get rusty? Albedo set a condition for this battle that goes, if her beloved loses, he'd have to stay in Nazarick for a year straight and do all the work together with her in one room. She really wanted this, and kinda cheated a little by involving Oriole, but still lost the bet after the Supreme One showed them who's boss. It wasn't that easy, as Doppel Shizu was being a big nuisance by staying undetected inside buildings and interrupting a lot of his spells, which earned her the title of the MVP and this mission as a reward. Their first interaction with Neia wasn't as smooth either. It was completely different, with Gustav as well as Custodio present, her being tied up in chains, and whatever. This is not a comparison to the light novel video, so I'll be wrapping it up. The movie is alright. Depths of story aside, it showed the most important parts and kept the mood of the source material. The intrigues were conspired, the advertisements failed, and most importantly, Shizu did her best. Here was I, Mahis, judging a performance into the microphone. Have a great, whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers. Most ideal, as this is what may... Почему я не могу это предложение прочитать? Алло, что за хуйня?